thinks a lot about the opening remark, and I have to thank Blake for giving it to me today. I'll tell you a quick story. How many in here are old enough to remember a movie called South Pacific? I see it. I'm not the only one right here. I want to tell you a short piece about that movie. Those that didn't see it. Filmed, a book by Mitchell, filmed in Hawaii. Most magnificent color I'd ever seen in my life. This must have been in the 90s. It's a great, great story, a huge, complex story, but the character that I fell in love with was an old lady, Hawaiian lady named Bloody Mary. Anybody remember her? She had this beautiful daughter named Leah, a beautiful daughter, and there was this handsome young lieutenant, Navy lieutenant, and she wanted to marry them off. And she concocted through that whole movie trying to put those two together. It's never going to happen, but she worked on it. And she, one of the great scenes of that movie that Clayton reminded me of, a way to kick us off right today. Bloody Mary was talking to this young couple sitting on the beach opposite, bachelor to each other. She looked at this young man, and I'll try to mimic her dialect, and she said, "What's your dream, Lieutenant?" And he said, "I've got a dream." And they closed up on this great shot of this huge tear coming out of this old lady's eyes. And she looked at him so sadly, and she said, "If you ain't got a dream, how are you ever going to have a dream come true?" And I heard Clayton remind me again that today, I wanted to share that feeling of my excitement of being here and my positive energy of being here. Because this is a 22-year dream come true for me. Today, right this minute, we're standing on this audience with an explosively successful company, and with all these incredible opportunity and energy in this room. I dreamed about this, that one day this vision of helping people cultivate, to farm, to nurture, to nourish, to pamper, truly nurture relationships. What was this most astounding discovery I'd had in my life? Quick background thumbnail, I was a global vice president of channel development for Smith Corona. Anybody in here old enough to remember typewriters? Keyboards, sort of like, but nothing else. I was with Smith Corona for the first 13 years of my business life, and I learned a great deal about what not to do, but when that sad ship sunk in the ocean in the recession of 88, or 78 rather, I ended up buying the first Canon office products distributorship, and I got it. And so yeah, just complete serendipity, blessing. Next door neighbor, vice president of Canon, he heard I was losing my ship, and he said, "Why don't you become a Canon dealer?" I've obviously been around resellers most of my life, entrepreneurs, all 7,000 dealers all over the world selling typewriters. And so I finished that world when they went out of business and started that little company in about 1985. I sold it back at Canon, and realized that I finally had enough money to do whatever I wanted to do, and I've never been in a place in my whole life. I was born on a farm with 10 kids. So we didn't have money to fund this. And it was all scrap, like always. Digging out a way to make a living for your family. But I met Rich Bone that year, and he started talking about the real problem that entrepreneurs have. And certainly I knew it from the channel people that I worked with. They didn't have a clue. They were far more lost than we were. You know, they were basically chasing low-hanging fruit. So I want to tell you something. I had that dream that day when I started that company. I started Nurture Marketing in 1986. And I had that dream that one day I would lead a software company because I have long known my limitations in math. And I knew I was not going to run a software company, but I also knew that without software, without the right software, entrepreneurism was going to flounder. Because we simply didn't have enough time to do the things that had to be done in addition to the things that we could not get away with not doing. And then Rich called and he said, "I think I found it for you." And we literally looked for almost 15 years looking for this product. And I, by the way, I was out. I was done. I had given up. My heart was broken long before this. I'd seen over 60 CRM products, all of them promising to heal our problems. None of them did. You know, some blind maniac figured out that I would like math and gave me an accounting machine, an inventory control machine, and said, that's a customer relationship management process. I never did see that. I couldn't automate anything on it. Maybe accounts receivable, I got that going. That was when I started thinking, well, why couldn't we make it do accounts attainable? Or attainable? Why couldn't we? So I just want to tell you, I had a dream, and I share your excitement about being here and to realize that what this team has put together has literally carved up something that all the giants, all the geniuses in technology ignored because they didn't think we would ever figure this out. And we did. Gilbert, Arizona. I'll never forget it. And so I'm so honored to be here with you today and to share that enthusiasm and energy and positive feelings that you have, and to tell you this is my dream come true. And so I guarantee you it's exciting. I started to title this talk, "A Cure for the Common Cold Call." That's also a way to get a plug-in for your book. That was my first book. No longer in print, but it's an ebook. If you'd like to have it, I'd be happy to give it to you. But it was 101 of the best tips that I had learned in all of those presentations to entrepreneurs and CEOs. The tips that I had learned about what it takes to build a relationship, business to business relationship, or business to consumer for that matter. And I started to call this that because I truly believe that what Infusionsoft has done is created a cure for the common cold call. Of course, Clayton wrote a better book than I did too. He got it very clear. He calls it follow-up failure. Heck with a cure for the common cold call. Give me a tool to handle that follow-up process. That's what I've been preaching, 20 years preaching about nurturing. I'm a farm boy, so that's where this all came from. I saw my dad and my mom were lovers, nurturers to the heart. My mom's favorite word was, I'll never forget this. She said, when you're poor as we are, you got to nurture the dirt. Listen to this. Environmentalist in the 30s. Two poor environmentalists. I mean, anything the kids couldn't eat, I'll guarantee you, that went to the animals, and if they didn't eat it, it was composted. We didn't know the word then, but there was no fertilizer. So if you wanted to grow a crop, you had to feed it. I had great parents. I had marvelous parents. God bless them. So that's why I'm here today. I will go anywhere in the world to talk to people about nurturing. Because we miss a point. You see, when we make this giant leap from no equipment, no technology, no possibility of communications, when we make a massive leap and they walk in from infusion and say, here, by the way, there's a fix for that. A cure for the common cold call. That sounds easy enough. So I started to call it Acres of Diamonds. Anyone read that book, by the way? Look around. This is the book. If you want to buy your child a book that will help them succeed forever, go to Amazon, $5. It's called Acres of Diamonds by Russell Conwell. Do you know who he was, by the way? He's one of the great speakers of all times, great preacher. He told this story about Acres of Diamonds, and I'm going to tell you that story as we go on this morning. But he did it free will. He would go to churches and communities all around the world, but specifically the United States, and he would give this talk about acres of diamonds and about how diamonds were discovered, and it became an amazing story. In fact, with the money that he got from free will offerings at these churches, he built and endowed Temple University in Philadelphia. Think of that, from one talk, one little title, Acres of Diamonds. You know this story. Those of you who've read it, and those of you who haven't, I promise you read it many times. You can tell that's not a new book. That's been around. My dad gave me that book, and it's an old book, but it's a powerful book because it basically talks about the heart And all of us as human beings need nourishment all the time. And we react, we feel abandonment. We feel that to the core. We don't get mad anymore. We just drift away saying, nobody's going to ever create a cure for this problem for us. Nobody's going to automate follow-up. Not for us. American Airlines did it with their $10.5 million for the code. Did you know that? Frequent flyer program, 1979, American Airlines. It was here way before PCs ever came along. It was here. But they never thought about us. They never thought about entrepreneurs. This is corporate stuff. You needed mainframes, and big-time programming. And I'll guarantee you, the history shows that within 7 months of the day that American launched the A Advantage program, every major airline, 11 major airlines in the world, had spent their millions to build their frequent flyer program. And I'll tell you an even funnier close. Nah, we haven't got time for that. Let's work. Shall we? By the way, on Acres of Diamonds, I'll give you a real quick story. He tells a story in the book about going down the Euphrates River back in the Lord knows when, 1800s, on a camel. And he had this old guide who was too talkative. And he bored this Cromwell to death because he told these bizarre stories. And finally, one day, he told him a story as they were trudging along this path, and he was fussing about somebody that he had told a story about, and he said, "Fool, if he had simply looked down, he would have died in acres of diamonds." And Conwell got interested, and he asked him what he meant, and he told him about this fellow that owned a farm, very prosperous farm, large family, wealthy, and he lived out on, way out in the boonies. And he told a story about this itinerant minister, preacher, that wandered through the land, and he would visit homes, and of course, if he would give a blessing and a lesson, they would feed him, and he would get to spend the night. And that was basically how those people lived. And he started telling the farmer about diamonds and how they had been discovered and how they were the hardest and most beautiful substance on earth and the most valuable substance on earth, and he addicted this farmer to the passion of something that couldn't possibly exist. And he sold that farm and abandoned his family and went off marching. He asked the priest, where will you find diamonds? And the priest told him, in a valley between two mountains, which runs with white sand. So he traipsed all over the world and never found them, threw himself in the ocean finally in despair, suicide. And the story ends in the book how when the banker who bought that farm never could sell it, and he was out watering his camel in the stream, and the camel nosed around in the rocks, and he saw a glimmer from the sun on this glint, and he picked up a rock about the size of a small softball, and he had no idea what it was, and he put it on his mantle because he loved the glint of the sunlight on it. No idea what it was. Sure enough, the old minister, out traveling, came back through, found the new banker in the house, and when the priest came in, he saw up on the mantle this glimmering rock, and he said, "He's back, Amir is back." And he said, No, Amir is dead. He committed suicide. And he said, "But he found diamonds. Why would he kill himself?" And he said, "He didn't find diamonds. He ran out of money, killed himself." And he said, "No, he found diamonds on the mantle. That's a diamond." And of course, the banker argued with him, and they had it assessed, and it was the largest diamond that's ever been found, the Golconda diamond from the Golconda mine. Acres of diamonds. They said if he had merely looked down, they're the largest diamond mine in the history of the world, still in production, and this farmer owned it. But he had his vision out there instead of right where he was.